Welcome into the Spiritual Evolution Podcast. My name is Brian Doyle. Have you ever felt overwhelmed with what is happening in the world, and that has caused you to lose focus in your life, to lose focus on the present moment, and to lose yourself in some ways? And as we enter into St. John's Tide and the time of year where the spirit is the brightest and the most radiant in nature, the spirit is the furthest away from us. And so the struggle is for us to be reminded of our inner life, our intuition, and our feeling of the truth, and being able to stay grounded within yourself and not lose yourself in the world of things happening. And in the winter, it's the opposite because we can get lost by not going out into the world, giving back, doing things for the world. And we can get lost in our inner life because maybe we're a little bit more isolated during the winter and there's less going on outside in the world, less happening. And so those are the two polarities that we are in tune with the world. And that's what Rudolf Steiner brought with the calendar of the soul. And if we continue to meditate with that every day for 52 weeks a year, he wrote 52 meditations, and each of them take you through the journey of the year and the fluctuation between the spirit and the world that we have coincides with St. John's Day, Michaelmas, which is in the fall, Christmas, and then Easter. And those are kind of the four quadrants and pillars of the different parts of the year and how they relate to us. And I just had a realization a little bit that, in the summer, when we're sort of having these, summer sadness or summer doldrums or, um, the dog days of July, all these types of things are just phrases and meanings for what I described earlier, in regards to the spirit being sort of further away from us. And this can make us vulnerable. And I think that the realization is that in the summer, we have to come back to a more of an Eastern tradition or mindset, maybe a Zen mindset, a Buddha, coming back to the Buddha's teaching, coming back to Krishna's teaching in the Bhagavad Gita, understanding that Buddha is a huge part of Christianity, and he still is working within all of us through the Buddha force. He is a big part of anthroposophy. He is a big part of the entire Christian stream because he gave part of himself to Jesus of Nazareth to give Jesus the wisdom that he exhibited in the temple at age 12, and how the rabbis and people were amazed. In the Gospel of Luke. And so the Gospel of Luke is something we can study as well, because the Gospel of Luke is associated with the bull or the Taurus, So right now we're going through Taurus time. Um, and we can also, um, in some ways, the Gospel of John, it is the eagle, and we are coming into St. John's tide and St. John's day. But in some ways, we need the love that comes from the Gospel of Luke more than we need the the far and high flying spirit that is the Gospel of John. And the Gospel of John, it sort of represents our spirit right now, flying far above us in the nature and in the natural world as a high flying eagle. And in some ways, those high thoughts are incomprehensible to us in this summer doldrums that we are starting to enter into. And so we have the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Love, and we have the opportunity through that to come back to the Buddhist and the Eastern traditional concepts that are associated with, in some ways, the Gospel of Luke. And in those ways, we come through, the Eightfold Path of Buddha, mindfulness, and the ancient Zen teachings of the basics. When you eat, eat. When you sit, sit. When you walk, walk. And that is a basic mindfulness practice that we can all do every day to ground us in our humanity, just to ground us in ourselves, to bring us back, bring our spirit back to us with mindfulness. And so, like I said, in the sense during the winter, this process is more we can be expected to cultivate more moral deeds for the world and to get out there because the spirit is the closest to us and those moral intuitions are closer at heart. And that's like giving back, right? Gifting during the Christmas season. That makes total sense to gift, to give yourself away because yourself is so close and it's so um, bountiful. It's so present. It's so um, rich that there's enough to give to everyone, enough to give to the world. But in the winter, or sorry, in the summer, we actually have to be more willing to go inward and to find and to bring that spirit back and to do more self-care, and maybe to be a little bit more isolated than we usually would be. A lot of us have, summer vacations and plans and things that we do, and we tend to plan more for the summer. And then in the winter, maybe we get caught up watching more TV or watching sports or things like that. I mean, in reality, it would probably be better to just not do that anytime during the whole year, really. And actually, recently, I've kind of gotten off my phone a lot. I turn it off and I really check it maybe like once, twice a day. And I've noticed that when I start to use it and I go back into the old habits, it actually sucks to use. I don't like it really at all. It really is not great. It lets off a lot of electromagnetic frequencies, which is another thing that we should try to avoid during this time, especially of year, during the summer. If we can try to disconnect from as much of the electromagnetic frequencies as we can, um, I can give a few tips, but you know, Ahriman or Satan in the Christian traditional language is more capable during the summer as the spirit, leaves the nest. In some ways, the Ahrimanic hawk can come down and take the eggs from the nest as the mother spirit, is farther away from us. And so the temptations are stronger. And and through this, we do have the opportunity to strengthen our spirit and discipline. Um, and I think that, the harmonic beings are present in the electromagnetic frequencies around us. They are also present within us, just as Christ is, um, just as Lucifer is as well. But electromagnetic frequencies, in particular, electromagnetism, Steiner was clear that that is the harmonic force. And so, we can do things to try to mitigate those forces because they will affect us probably worse in the summer, as I talked about, as Armand is stronger, as the spirit is, in some senses, weaker. But we can see nature around us, we can ground to the earth, we can be in nature, and that brings us back closer to the spirit again because we see the spirit as we go for walks in nature, and we see the spirit around us. We can get closer to it because we can recognize ourself, our true self in nature, because nature has fully bloomed, the spirit is fully bloomed. But as the spirit has fully bloomed, it is away from us. And it's not in the earth either, right? The spirit has left the inner core of the earth and it is now out for everyone to see. And so the earth, in that sense, is a mirror of us because in the winter, the spirit goes back into the earth just as it goes back into us. And obviously, the spirit is always present, even in the summer. But all I'm saying is that there's a less of a presence there. And that is really what the calendar of the soul teaches us. And the fact that Christ died on the cross at Golgotha, he connected the great spirit of the Son, the Christ being, to the earth when his blood spilled from the spear of Longinus onto the ground, onto the earth. And the ego represented in the blood connected with the earth, which brought the spirit of Christ connected to the earth, and he connected the spirit of the Son, the Elohim, to the earth as well. And so now the earth has the power of the sun. And this is why we have the changing of the spiritual qualities that I'm talking about because we are part of that process now of the sun on the earth. And the powers of the sun are within us, and they are within the earth. And we are evolving as part of that process. And as part of that evolution, we are now able to perceive the Christ in the etheric realm. If we study spiritual science, we understand spiritual science. And that is why it's important to study the calendar of the soul, to understand the shifting and the changes. And I came on the podcast today thinking that I was going to be talking about the doom and gloom of the world. But then I realized I got caught up in the fear, the inner fear, the harmonic. I lost the spirit. And what I just now realized is again what I mentioned earlier is that the summer and the winter is a shifting in terms of spiritual practice because the summer can be the Eastern and the winter can be the Western. And I think that that makes a lot of sense. And spiritual science is a combination of both. And so that can happen at any time. But there are certain lectures, maybe the Gospel of Mark and the Gospel of Luke that Steiner does, which are more Eastern related. The Bhagavad Gita lectures, which are sort of also partially in the Gospel of Mark. In some ways, those types of lectures and studying Buddha, studying Krishna are going to give you more fruit in these summer times as opposed to maybe a higher teaching or Western teaching. And I think that it all works into one. And so as we ground ourselves and become more mindful without as much technology, we naturally come closer to the Christ. And that's the point, is that we can be cultivating these Eastern traditional concepts and practices which lead us to the Christ. And then in the winter, when the Christ is within, further, the Spirit is within further. He's obviously always there. Then we can read the Gospels and understand the Gospels and go and do the Lord's work in the world, right? We can go out into the world because at that point, we are the light of the world. We have to go out and find the light within others and connect because the light of the world is more within us and within others' hearts and minds and souls than it would be in the winter, or sorry, than it would be in the summer, right? So the calendar of the soul and this oscillating back and forth throughout the year is so, so important. to think about. It's a mystery. These are deeper esoteric secrets that were kept from the public until 1899 when the Kali Yuga ended, which started in 3101 BC. And we shifted into the age of light, into the age of Michael, which will last for 300 years until we shift to the next archangel, who I believe is Vidar, but I almost hesitate to even say anything about the current events of the world and what's happening because I've fallen into that trap, and I thought I was going to do a whole report, this dark sort of report on, Ahriman and electromagnetic frequencies and artificial intelligence and sort of combining them all together. But I just don't think that that's right. And so by me creating this podcast, whether anyone listens to it or not, it's just a personal realization for me and a healing in many ways for me to even just say these words that I've said today. And so I thank you for allowing me to be a part of your life if you are listening, and for allowing me to talk through some of these issues, and hopefully, you got something out of it as well, whether you're an anthroposophist or if you're not, either way, we can learn the oscillating spirit in the calendar of the soul and understand what we need to cultivate through the different parts of the year. Thank you. Have a blessed day. Have a great summer. And hopefully you find the peace within and the mindfulness that you need to carry forward. Thank you.